Alrighty, welcome in. It is your favorite political podcast. It's Alabama Politics This Week with Josh Moon and
David Person, who, by the way, in case anybody's interested, is not at the beach. But somebody else is at the beach, still at the beach.
I don't know what you're talking about. No idea what you mean. I don't know who you could be referring to. Yeah, look, man. Okay, look, I'll tell everybody. Look, my wife and I, we have basically work from home jobs, and so we have an opportunity each year to bring our young daughter, down to the beach and let her hang with her grandparents and her cousins. And so we come and we basically work from the beach. It's a working sort of a thing. Look, I've got plenty of work done since I've been here. Okay, y'all can check up on me. I've been writing stuff.
I believe you. I believe you. And
I'm doing a podcast for God's sakes. I'm here.
Of course, everybody's not wearing swimming trunks while they're doing the podcast.
Hey,
but I digress.
Man, you ain't got to tell everything. Come on now.
Swimming trunks and trunks and flip flops, but I digress.
Some of
that's cool, man. That's cool.
It's not even it. Some of us aren't even wearing flip flops. So, that's it's.
Well,
you
know what? All kidding aside, seriously, I love the fact. I think I was telling you this. Maybe it was before we started, or maybe it was some other conversation. I'm an only child, so I understand the need for only children to have that kind of family connection. So the fact that your little girl is able to hang out with her, Andy's able to hang out with her cousins for a solid month, man, that's good stuff, man. That's cool. I love it. I used to see my cousins also, but it wasn't like that. It wasn't for a solid month. So I appreciate it. I love what you and the wife are doing for her.
Yeah, we do. We know we spoil her in the ways that we can, and getting together with family is one of them, and making sure that she can run around, she's having a good time, and also, and I think one of the more important things about it too is also getting to hang out with her grandparents. My parents,
sure,
and spending that time. They, my parents will take the kids out to eat, here, and so it's just. I think it's something you see. I get the pictures back, and so I know everybody's having a real good time, and it's it's something that I hope that they all remember, and it's something that's a great memory for a long time, and so that's really the reason we do it, because I'll be honest. Listen, it is great. It's great to walk out here when the day is done, and or if you have a break and go to the beach. And I don't want to make it sound like it's not okay, but there are some days where it gets complicated. It gets in trying to work and get the things done, because their thing. This is a for real work day, and so it sometimes can be, and no tears shed for me, okay, or anything, but it sometimes does get to be a little hectic and a little tough and irritating and stuff, and so my poor wife is sometimes holed up into a room on phone calls, and kids are screaming somewhere, and she's it's basically like this, and it's just so there are some challenges to this, but we do enjoy it, and we love the experience and all that. Hey, before we get moving here and talk about some big changes, what I think could be the biggest change in party politics in this state in a long, long time, I want to tell you about our friends at Wind Creek Entertainment. They make this thing happen. It's Alabama Politics This Week, brought to you by Wind Creek Entertainment. We appreciate them for what they do for us and for what they do for the state. They operate 3 fantastic casino resorts in this state, in Wetumpka, Montgomery, and Atmore. You should go and see them any chance you get. If, for example, you're about to, the time's winding down. We got about a week or so left, maybe 2 weeks, depending on where you are, of summer, because they're stealing it steadily from our children like thieves. And taking it away. Took all of August, and last year tried to take some of July, and I resisted. We did not do it.
Yeah.
No, we did not.
Yeah.
We stayed here. We stayed here all the way through. But it's if you're going to the beach, if you're going to make the last trips, you also got the Labor Day weekend coming up. Stop. Break up the trip, stop and stay with Wetumpka or Atmore, depending on where you're traveling from. I'm telling you, you're not going to regret that. Also, we got a lot of ball games coming up. You're traveling over to the ball games in Auburn. Stop in Wetumpka. You're traveling up, going to Tuscaloosa or wherever, stop in Wetumpka, stop in Atmore, stop in there, have a good time. They've got the sports bars all set up in there. You can't bet on sports, but you can have yourself a nice time. You can hit the spas, you can hit the resort style pool. Still got that's going to be good up until and down in Atmore, be good until November sometime.
Yeah,
So listen, go and see them. I'm telling you, you will not regret it. Look them up online at Wind Creek Entertainment, and you will enjoy it. I promise. All right, Bobby Singleton.
absolutely. Yeah.
Uh, Bobby Singleton is going to run for party chair of the Alabama Democratic Party. I put some of my thoughts on Facebook. I think it's possibly the biggest story that we've had in years for the Alabama Democratic Party, a positive story. And so now I wonder what your thoughts are, Dave.
Well, first of all, let me say I respect Senator Singleton. I think from what I can tell, he's been a very good public servant. And I think that for whatever it's worth, he's been a good Democrat as well, as far as I can tell. I think that I think he's going to have a challenge. And that challenge is, and I think he knows that. I think the challenge he's going to have is trying to, unify a party that has been fractured for years along racial lines, along philosophical lines. And I think that has only intensified as the years have gone on. And of course, we've seen how it's played out recently in the very recent past with Doug Jones and Joe Reed and Randy Kelly kind of being at each other's throats, publicly, very publicly. So I think he's got a real challenge here. He represents an alternative. I definitely do believe that he represents an alternative to the status quo, and I think that could be a good thing. But my real question is, and this is no slight to him, but my real question is, does he have the ability to break through all of that and really emerge as a person that people on both sides, or maybe I shouldn't say both, but all sides of these various disputes can trust? And and again, this is no slight to him, but I don't know if he can, and I'm not sure who can do that, but I'd like to see somebody try. So he's trying, and let's see what happens. I hope he's successful, because I think that does need to happen. The status quo it's not sustainable. It's not
Yeah.
sustainable. And
Yeah.
that's on either side. It's not sustainable. So we
Yeah.
got to have somebody emerge as a unifier and a visionary, because otherwise this party is going to continue to be the minority party and to be, mostly more ineffective than not.
Mhm. Yeah, you're right. And I'm with you on pretty much everything you said. In that, the questions remain about whether or not he can do this or anybody can, because
Yeah.
the folks have become so entrenched on their various sides of this thing. I do think there's some hope in that. The party has gotten younger over the course of the last few years. I think especially with the introduction of that youth caucus, 4 or 5 years ago, I think that helped bring in some new folks, some new ideas. Maybe there are some folks who aren't quite as tied to those old lines as there once were. And so we'll see. We'll see if this is something that they can use to kind of get over the hump with this with Bobby Singleton. I'll say this. Setting aside the factions part of this,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
just getting past that with somebody. And I do think Bobby would be a good guy to get past a lot of that, because I do know he has a fantastic relationship with Dr. Reed. They have been together for a long time. They know each other well. They're not at each other's throats. They work together fine. They respect one another. There's no hostility coming into this thing as there were back in 2019. I think everybody who's been around this state for a while knows that the England family and the Reid family have not necessarily gotten along. And so when Chris England came
Mm,
in as the party chair, there was going to be some natural hostility there. And Joe Reid and Randy Kelly and all of the folks that were there with him were going to naturally resist everything that was Chris England. So that was coming no matter what. I don't think that's the same thing with Bobby Singleton. I think if he's able to win and everything remains respectful as it seems to be going right now, and we'll talk to Bobby Singleton in a few minutes, and ask him about it. But I think that it can be something that he sets aside some of that nonsense. I don't think you can set aside all of it. No, I don't think any one person could ever do that. But the biggest thing I think is he has the business community connections. Um, and that's been the thing that Bobby Singleton has always been known for during his time in the legislature and the Senate, is that he is a guy who had those relationships with the Alabama powers, with the BCAs, the regions, the all of these folks are from around the state. He's figured out a way to work with them. Now he's been critical of them. He's not been their favorite person from time to time, but he's also understood how to kind of navigate this thing where you work with them, but also do so to make sure you can get some things that you want. And I think I've seen some folks criticize him for the PSC situation that went on. That cake
yeah.
was baked, okay? And that's what people need to understand about this. The thing was baked, and the only thing that Democrats could hope to do was to get something out of it. And what they got out of it, between he and Anthony Daniels working together, was the fact that now there's going to be a black member on that board. There's going to be someone and that person turned out to be one of the highest quality folks you'll ever meet in your life, in Quentin Ross. I don't know who else you could have on the thing that would have been better than Quentin Ross, the president of Alabama State University. I just,
Well,
you
yeah,
know,
you got at least one black person. You
yes.
got Sheila McNeil, who's running here from up here this way
Hmm.
in Madison County. If she gets elected, you'll have at least two.
Yes. Yeah. No, you're right.
Yeah.
And so, but I think it's what I'm saying is you sometimes you just got to get what you can get. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Sometimes you just got to get what you can get, especially if you're the super minority in this state, and that's what they are. And that's what people need to remember whenever they're criticizing, Bobby Singleton or Anthony Daniels or any of the Democrats. Sometimes they make deals on some of these things because they know it's going to pass, and you can grandstand if you'd like on these things, and put your name out there and do and get some good press clips for yourself, or you can get some things that actually help people. You can get a voice on it. What they wanted to give them, what they wanted to give the Democrats was they had input. They got to suggest a position for a person for each position on the board. They got to suggest that. That's what was in the original negotiations. And
Mhm.
so Bobby and Anthony Daniels worked that out to where it was now, hey, no, we're gonna get one person. We're not just gonna have input on all of them. We're gonna get one person. And so that's what I'm saying, though. That's the kind of compromise and the kind of things that you've got to do from time to time, to get things done. And I think that's where Singleton comes into this, because I think the one thing that we need, aside from stopping the fighting, from the Democrats, is we need money. From if you're on the Democratic side of this
Well,
thing, you're not supporting candidates like the Republican Party is supporting candidates. You're not,
yeah.
you don't have that base to go out and provide for candidates who need who are good candidates, but they just need a little publicity, and you need to run some ads and you need to help them with get out the vote campaign. You need to this
Right.
or that, and you don't have it right now. You don't have that.
Well,
So
now I thought the Democratic Party was in better financial shape
they're in better
than it
financial
had
shape,
been.
but you don't. Yeah, but better financial shape depends on where you started from. You know what I mean?
Okay,
You
yeah, I
know?
mean, that's
Uh,
a point, but
yeah.
I just wanted I guess I wanna make the point that while I agree with you that money fuels politics and
Mhm.
everybody understands that, the Democratic Party is not destitute. It has the ability right now, I suspect, to do more than it's been doing. At least that's my suspicion.
Well, I think
Let me
I
let
think
me let
somebody
me
would
toss
argue
out
with you that they're not doing more though. I think that's the problem. Is that
well,
they're
and I'm not yeah, and I don't disagree with that. But I
yeah.
don't think that's a money issue. I think that's a priority issue, a vision issue. I don't think that's necessarily a money issue. Let me toss out a couple of things that I think Senator Singleton is going to have to deal with, and the first one is, even though the business connections are important, I don't dispute that at all. I think the bigger challenge, the most urgent issue is party unification. Because if you don't have a unified party, if you don't have the activist wing, the civil rights activist wing of the Democratic Party, and I'm using civil rights not just in terms of black and white, but I'm including LGBTQ issues, disability, youth issues, all of the activist sort of concerns. If you don't find a way, if he doesn't find a way, or somebody doesn't find a way to bridge those two interests, the business interest with the activist interest, I think the business connections are going to really be sort of nullified because no business entity is going to want to give to a party that's not a good investment. And I don't think this party is going to be a good investment until we find a way to get some unification between those two entities. The other thing that I think is really key here is you talked about the trending of the Democratic Party in our state towards younger members, and I think that's a good thing, no question. However, there is a challenge, and the challenge is that based on the media reports I've seen and some of the statistics that have been cited, younger people are actually becoming less attracted to partisan politics. They are becoming more disinclined to be loyal to a party. And in fact, the segment of the political population that seems to be growing, I'm not saying that it's yet reached equity with the parties, is independence. Independence. More people are thinking not in terms of being Democrats or being Republicans or even Green Party, perhaps, or some of these other ones, but being politically independent. So the future of the Democratic Party in Alabama and nationally, I think really depends on someone being able to say, despite all of the commotion and all of the fighting and whatever else that has gone on in the past, we're presenting a vision for the party that you younger, independent, and independently inclined voters can sign on to. So he's going to have to deal with that and be able to appeal to that as well.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but I mean, at the end of the day, it is still going to be a party, and so you're not going to be able to shake that. And I
Well, what do
understand what
you
you're saying.
mean by that?
I've seen some of the same surveys. I'm just saying that if you're not inclined to be a member of a party, then it's going to be hard to get you in, no matter who you are. And so who no matter who's leading that party, because it's a party. I mean, at the end of the day, if the person that you're trying to sell is saying, "Hey, I'm not into partisan politics here. I'm not going to be a member of a party," well, then it's going to be a tough sell. And so you're going to have to get folks into there that believe more so into the messaging, and you're going to have to get folks in there. And I think that's where what we go back to before, where we're talking about helping these candidates out. We got to help these candidates with a message that resonates with people, and to spread that message out to people that they can attract. And so whether you're growing the membership of the party, or whether you're just growing the votes for the party candidates, that's all that really matters. I mean, all that we're talking about here is we need to get more Democrats into office, and no matter how you go about that, that's the winning strategy, right?
Well, getting more Democrats in the office, yes, but I'm saying to do that, you got to have a party populated with people that are willing to do the work and to to use a religious term, evangelize. And I'm saying I think that what's happening, the trending is away from the parties growing, not just the Democratic Party, but the Republican Party also, because younger people are fed up with the partisanship, and they are looking in other directions. In fact, that's why some people say the Democratic Socialist uh, um, party or movement is growing, because there's this sort of, they're just fed up with the direction of, the Democrats. And then, even let's go ahead and throw this into it, Josh, even though this may not have as much relevance here in Alabama. The National Democratic Party is in real disarray right now. Ken Martin is being looked at as an ineffective leader. The fundraising gap is huge. The amount of money and resources that the Democratic Party has nationally versus the Republicans is huge. So, right now it's just, being a Democrat it's a challenging thing. When you start looking at the fact that we're trying to win elections, but the national party doesn't seem to be in any kind of position to provide any kind of resources or vision, and maybe even leadership.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, they obviously, I've read the stories. I think they do have some problems, obviously, in terms of fundraising and some other things that have been happening. But I gotta say, I think that a lot of what's happening, especially with the Democratic Socialist deal, is what I was saying earlier. It's less about the party itself and more about the ideas that are being put forth by individual candidates. I mean, a lot of that, people attribute that to the Mamdani kind of experiment in New York City and what
Mhm.
he's been able to do. And people look at what he's doing right now and they say, well, you've been doing a lot of that same stuff for businesses. Why can't you do it for us? And why can't we have a grocery store that is run by the city that offers 30% lower prices on things? Why can't we have cheaper bus fares? Why can't we have rent control that makes it to where housing isn't unaffordable on a basic salary? Why can't we have these things? And
Right.
why can't we tax folks on their excesses to get it done? Because you have so many billionaires who are living in New York City right now. And look, they can scream all they want to about they're moving out of New York City. Those people ain't going any damn where. All right. That's the hub. That's the financial hub of the world. They're not moving. They're not moving out of there. And so if he wants to tax them, and raise the taxes back up to what they were during the Eisenhower administration, when it was, that noted liberal Dwight D. Eisenhower, who was charging 90% tax rate on everything above $1 million, then he can do it. And they're not going to go anywhere. They're not. They're not. They're going to stay right where they are because that's where they live, and they're still making good money. And all this crying that a bunch of working stiffs are doing over these poor billionaires getting taxed, and now they're not going to let any of it trickle down to us, is so ridiculous. But I think my point overall there is this is what I think sells for Democrats are the ideas. And where I think the party needs to be in this state and nationally is helping them sell the ideas. And we don't have to worry about so much that this person, because of the podcast bros who've turned the young people off to politics or whatever, that they're now no longer willing to identify as a Democrat or a Republican. All you care about is when they walk into the voting booth, they know that the guy with the best ideas is that Democrat who's telling me that we're going to address the issues that really matter to you, and not whether there's a transgender person that may sometime end up on a school team somewhere. That's what I think sells for, and I think that's what sells in Alabama. And you've got to sell those ideas, and without the resources of the business community in Alabama, and without being able to tell people, hey, look, we're stabilizing things at the top. You can trust us to do the things that we're saying we're going to do. Okay. And then getting that helping going down the line and helping the folks in these county races, in the city races, in the races at, at the legislature level, helping them get their messages out to say, this is what we're doing here. Here's how we're going to help you with rural healthcare. Listen, our hospital just closed, and I've got a plan to bring in some other healthcare to help save us, to help to make it to where if your mom or dad has a heart attack, they're not on an ambulance for the next 45 minutes trying to get to a hospital that can save their lives. Or if your sister who's pregnant is having a baby, she ain't got to travel an hour to get to somewhere that can safely deliver that baby. That's the sort of things that we've got to be able to do and to convey to people. And honestly, man, just remove the negative aura around being a Democrat. I mean, they've done such an effective job in the state of dirtying up the word and the moniker Democrat that it just I think you've got to erase that first and foremost, is just to say, that, yeah, we're part of the
Yeah.
Democratic Party. And here's what that means to you. Here's what this means to
Mhm.
you as a working class person in this state.
Well,
And to convey to people
the
also, oh yeah, by the way, when you're telling people that this state's in terrible shape, guess who's been in charge of this sumbitch for the last 15 years?
Right, right. Yeah, no question, especially on that last point. Yeah, and interestingly enough, the two people that seem to be doing the best job of messaging the positive aspects of what being a Democrat can do are James Tallarico in Texas. I'm talking about
Hmm.
on a national level.
Yeah.
James Tallarico in Texas, and then perhaps ironically, Mondami in New York.
Hmm.
Even though he's doing it as a Democratic socialist, I think he is helping people to understand better why those values matter
Yeah.
and how they can have a positive impact and sort of get people to move past the negative aura that you talked about.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. That those two guys are doing a lot. I think that meeting that he had, Mondani, I'm talking about, had with Trump,
Mhm.
where he walked out and Trump was all of a sudden the biggest fan of the guy that you'd ever seen. It was just, it was clearly he had won him over in a matter of minutes, in this meeting at the White House that they had a few months back. I think that did a lot to sell people on the fact that, hey, maybe we should listen to what he says. And I really do think that a lot of people on the right all of a sudden took a look and said, hey, I wouldn't mind if my rent was a little lower. I wouldn't mind if we had better transportation that didn't cost so much. I wouldn't mind if we could do something about this childcare situation that's really holding my wife back from being able to take a job. I
Mhm.
think those things matter to people, and when you can get them in front of folks, and it's not presented in some negative connotation, like the Republicans are really good at being negative, and when it's not presented in some negative connotation, and you just present it as just a factual state, then yeah, it's very, very appealing to people. Very appealing to
Yeah,
people. What? Because
yeah.
you're not asking for straight up socialism or communism or whatever in the hell they're trying to call it now. I mean, it's really the idiocy of some of
Mhm.
these things that they're doing now, and the communism thing
Yeah.
is killing me. I mean, it's just you're so
Yeah, that's a yeah,
you're
that's a big smokescreen,
I
yeah.
mean, who is telling you that they're taking away all the property and the means of production? Nobody. I mean, shut up. You
Nobody.
don't even know what it
Yeah.
means. But so
Nah, it's just a smear.
yeah, of course it is. Of course it is. And but they're again, they're trying to dirty this up, and at the same time, you say to people, dude, you're bitching about you're over here cheering people getting kicked off a SNAP. And in the meantime, we gave a tax break to billionaires so they could write off their private jets.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
let's also not forget that Trump has been the biggest cheerleader of communist leaders, like the North Korean leader. I mean, he's absolutely a
yeah,
communist, and Putin, while Putin may not be technically, depending upon how you look at it, a
yeah,
communist, he certainly still represents, I think, a lot of those the values that we have traditionally criticized when it comes to communism,
mhm,
and those are some of Trump's favorite people, so what
yeah.
does that make Trump?
Well, I mean, you also look at, you remember Trump got involved in this whole deal where they were putting tariffs on the American companies if they didn't move back to America, and also they
Yeah.
were also putting in place deals where the American government owned portions of these companies if they wanted to go
Exactly.
over and do business in other markets.
Exactly.
That's not communism. I mean, I know that I think state socialism is is really kind of more what it
Probably the
fits
more
into.
yeah.
But but yeah, I mean, you want to talk about some things that fall outside of good old American capitalism. Well, those are the things that
That's
fall
it.
outside of that, man.
That's
I
it.
mean, that is putting the government directly, influencing decisions on things. It's just crazy to me
Mhm.
the way that we have overlooked some things, and the way that we have allowed. Oh, that's great, nice. It's you like that? A little bit of yard work.
Yeah, 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 I heard that. That's alright. It's ambiance. It's
It's
ambiance.
ambiance, yeah. I don't know how loud that got, but, I'm also sure there's gonna be a lawnmower come through here at some point in a few minutes too.
Yeah, we could still hear you. We
Yeah,
could still
okay.
hear you.
Alright, well,
Yeah.
I'll try to throw the other earbud in here and do the complete noise canceling thing here when we get to our next guest, but, I just
Alright.
it's, the way that people have been divided up now with some folks have anyways on the teams, it's really kind of disconcerting. That nothing matters to some people anymore. That the hypocrisy never seems to register. That we don't have any sort of a uh, reasonable back and forth on issues as important as simply what level of of things our government is doing. What they're actually able to achieve and not achieve, and that is that to me is really kind of problematic. And some of those folks you're never going to be able to get back in the fold, I don't think, because they've just sworn off being a Democrat or anything else, and they're not going to vote for themselves. And
Mhm.
so, but I think we're in this state where we do have some opportunities, or we got a lot of poor folks. We got a lot of people who are struggling. We got a lot of people who are unhappy with the way things are going. We got a lot of people who
Yeah.
were sold a bill of goods by this president, this administration, and I think those people are angry with the way life is. And if you can present them other opportunities, other options out there, no matter where that's coming from, I think that those people are going to be open to that. Go. All
Well,
righty.
I hope so. Yeah.
Let's slide out. We'll come back. We're going to have Bobby Singleton on in a few minutes. We're also going to have Lieutenant Governor candidate Philip Ensler on in just a minute as well. We'll slide out. We'll be back in a minute. It's Alabama Politics This Week, brought to you by Wind Creek Entertainment. Alabama politics this week. Josh Moon, David Person, and the guy that we should really get on is like the third host of this thing. Philip Ensler's with us now, Lieutenant Governor candidate. We really like having you on. It's
Yeah.
always a pleasure. We always have such a good conversation. It's always knowledgeable. I feel like every time we've talked to you. Your people come away with a better understanding of issues and feeling better about the folks who could possibly lead this state. And I know that you're vying for a pretty important position in lieutenant governor. How has the campaigning been going? I know you're trying to travel around to every county. How far along are you in that process, and how have you been received?
Yeah, no, it's always great to be on, and yeah, always a good conversation. It's going well. I'm at about 2/3 of the counties. We're at not that I'm counting, but 97 days to go until the election. So we'll keep at it until I've reached every county. And look, not to sound cliche, but it really is incredible that no matter where I go, rural areas, urban, suburban, uh, more impoverished areas, more affluent. I mean, I hear a lot of the same things over and over again. And people, they don't want anything extravagant. They don't want anything that's too unreasonable. They just want leaders that are responsive. They want leaders that live in Alabama and meet the residency requirements. They want leaders that are focused on day-to-day solutions. And I know, we've talked about those before. I know you guys talk about those a lot. on the podcast, and it's, again, I don't want to sound all like mushy, but it really, there's so much more that we have in common than we do different. So I love getting out there. It is physically tiring. I'm not going to lie. Like, there are times where I'll drive, 3 hours to go to a meeting for an hour to only drive another 3 hours back home. But I'm it's physically tiring, but I'm energized, by meeting with people and getting out there. So it's going well, and looking forward to November 3rd.
What when you talk to people now, I get the sense that some things have shifted in terms of what the priorities are and what's most important to people. Certainly over the last year, but even in the last couple of months, I feel like there has been a monumental shift towards anti-data center. uh, and this, people, this I don't know that I've ever seen an issue kind of take hold like this has, and cross party lines, cross racial lines, cross economic lines,
Yeah.
everything. There seems this seems to be the biggest issue out there. But I also know that I'm in somewhat of a political bubble, so I get the news, and it's always presented in this political nature. And so I wonder, when you're going around to different communities, I know you speak at a lot of political events, and so you're somewhat in that bubble. But I also know you get out of that as well, and you just meet people in diners and in restaurants and things like that. Is it as big of an issue as I think it is?
It is, and it same thing. It has really blown me away how much it transcends all of those lines. And I knew it was a big issue a while back when it started, getting attention in Birmingham and the suburbs there. But I was invited to Lowndes County, and I went to a county commission meeting there a couple months ago, and the room, it was overflow, where people were literally standing outside, and it was a combination white, black, people that identify as Republican, people that identify as Democrat, and we're all there with a singular reason, and that was because they felt that they weren't getting enough information from their elected officials, and they had a lot of questions. And what I've heard people say is that they're not necessarily completely anti-data center, but what they
Hmm.
are really concerned about is the lack of transparency and the secrecy. I mean, the non-disclosure agreements that some public officials are signing, I mean, is absolutely just, you know, beyond frustrating, and for people, because they feel like, wait a second, I elected, or our community elected someone to be a public official, yet they're hiding behind these NDAs where they say they're not going to share basic information. So it's a huge issue, and it's something where people just want basic answers. And the last thing I'll say is this: is we see from the right, and Tuberville putting out there saying, oh well, it's all Chinese propaganda. And I heard someone say, and I've heard this quite a bit, they said, yeah, of course we want to be competitive with China. I was in Mount Vernon 2 nights ago. They had a community meeting there about a potential data center. And people said, yeah, of course we want to be competitive with China, but not if it means that our drinking and bathwater is going to be polluted, or not if it means our electrical bill is going to go up. At what cost do we become competitive? So to dismiss it as Chinese propaganda is really belittling and dismissive of the concerns of people in our state who have very real concerns.
Yeah, yeah. Before David hops in, just one more. What is your position on data centers? Where do
Yeah,
you fall in this? Where do you say?
yeah. So I, a couple of months ago, called for a moratorium, and Doug Jones and I have been discussing that together. And the reason for that is that it's not to completely ban data centers forever in Alabama and never have any of them. But right now the process is so rushed and shoved down people's throats. So a moratorium allows to slow things down, and it would allow the legislature and county commissions and city councils to adopt better zoning ordinances and laws, to have better environmental processes, and a rigorous review process. So a moratorium allows us to say, hey, before we do anything that's going to harm people, let's allow the time to put in a regulatory framework and process that will also allow for more public input.
Philip, you said you were just in Lowndes County, and we know that uh, clean water issues are major down there, due to the lack of effective sanitation processes. Um, do you think that the data center issue is eclipsing that issue in Lowndes County?
I don't want to speak for the residents, of course, of Lowndes County, but based off of the turnout at the county commission meeting, and they show up not just that one time, over and over and over again. So I would say right now it is the dominant issue. And they're tied together though, because obviously if there's an impact on the quality of water in Lowndes County, where residents are already dealing with septic tank issues, where they have straight line pipes that are going into their backyards, when it's already an issue, that this exacerbates it and makes it even harder on people. So they're a little, so as far as they're talking about it, I would say it's more dominant, the data center issue, but they're certainly linked together.
Yeah, I think that's a great observation. I agree with you. I think they are on the same continuum in terms of the challenges that that county is facing. Let's shift to Tuberville. Tuberville has released made this announcement about this so-called Golden Age Action Team, that's supposedly going to, target and eliminate waste in the state if he's elected. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, a few things. One, it's incredibly arrogant and presumptuous to announce something like that well before voters have actually had a say at the ballot box. So he's getting way ahead of himself on that. Secondly, it's almost an indictment of the status quo and how government has been run. If he's saying, well, hey, there's all this fraud and all this abuse. Republicans are in the supermajority. They've had the governor's office, they've had the lieutenant governor's office, and so on and so forth. So it's almost like saying that those that are in power now aren't working and aren't doing their job. And third, though, I would say that talking about, I mean, it's a playbook straight out of Trump and DC, and putting handpicked friends who just want to get rich off of government. They want to make money when they're in there, and not actually pay attention to that there are families that are struggling to put food on the table, that there are workers that are working extra hard, yet the government is taking more of their taxes, and they're not able to afford gas or their electrical bill. So it's just very disconnected from what I hear, what Doug hears every day from residents. And I really think at the end of the day, it's a part of this mentality of there's some people who want to be in office so they can get rich, and that they can enrich their friends, and their little buddies can continue to do well, while other people have a hard time.
Hmm. Final question from me. Bobby Singleton uh, is actively running to be the next chair of the Democratic Party. What do you think about Bobby Singleton running?
Yeah, I love Senator Singleton. I've known him before I was even in the legislature, and he is an incredible senator. He's a great leader, and I look forward to hopefully working with him as lieutenant governor up in the Senate. As far as the election, I'll leave that up to SCEC members to pick. I'm not one of those members, but I think Senator Singleton is incredible, and I appreciate his leadership. And look, as Democrats, we need to focus on working together, not fighting each other. And I think unifying and saying, look, we're going to focus on Republicans. My approach is we got to, as Democrats, not fight each other, but work together, and hopefully, after that August 8th meeting, we emerge with a singular focus on the goal of winning in November.
So, are you saying that you prefer Singleton to Kelly?
I'm going to stay out of that because I don't have a vote in it. And look, I've worked well with Chairman Kelly, worked well with Dr. Reed, but I certainly, like I said, I love Bobby Singleton. I think he's a great leader, and I'll work well with whoever is the chair.
Okay.
No, I think that's fair. And but let me ask you this: we also had a discussion before you came on about the party and about the future of the party and about the recent past of the party, and where things are, and particularly where things are in terms of the party assisting candidates. You are running for one of the most high-profile offices on the ticket. This is a great Democratic ticket. I think there's no argument that this is the best ticket that Democrats have had in over a decade. Just the sheer volume of Democrats on the ticket makes it the best ticket that we've had in over a decade. But so where do you feel like, I mean, and I'm not putting you on the spot. I don't want you to to feel like you got to criticize somebody or whatever, but you're there on and running, and so I'm not trying to draw you into a fight or anything. What do you feel like as a candidate, though? Where do you feel like the party falls in assisting you? And are there things that could be done better, or are there things that you need out there on the campaign trail that would help you or help other candidates? Where do you feel like things are, or do you feel like that's being covered pretty well?
Yeah, look, I'm, and I know everyone is different. There's some who are, get much more into critiquing the party, talking about what's going well,
Sure.
what's not working. I'm more of the attitude of like, I would love to have a strong party and strong leadership, and have them, have field operations where they're organizing campuses and phone banks and bringing together. There are things where instead of me canvassing in a certain neighborhood and a local candidate canvassing, if the party could help coordinate some of those efforts to have Democrats up and down the ballot, really working more closely together, I think that would be a huge help. I know at the end of the day, whatever the party does or doesn't do, I have to run a strong race. But like I said, I think that when we work together, we're in a much better place. And like any family, we should have differences and there should be disagreements between Democrats. But at the end of the day, I worry that sometimes we end up getting so focused on fighting each other while Republicans sit back and laugh about it, or they continue to go on cruise control and win these seats. And I think that having debate within the party and saying that there are things that can be done better is good and healthy. But I hope that people can put aside egos and differences and say, let's coordinate up and down the ballot, to get out the vote.
All right. Yeah. Let me ask you one other thing about just policy here as well. It looks like, and from talking to some people involved in government on the Republican side and on the Democratic side, the days of Alabama being kind of flush with cash from the government perspective are over. They're looking at some pretty big holes that they're going to have to fill over the next 2-3 years, especially, and that's that's if things just can remain the status quo. That's without them kind of turning around, and so and if they got worse, oh, God knows. But where are I think one place that people have looked for revenue obviously is gambling. What is your position on a lottery, on casinos, on sports wagering? Where do y'all fall in terms of legalization? Legalization broadly of creating a comprehensive. I hate it when people say we're going to bring gambling to the state. Gambling's already in the state. We've already got legal gambling in the state. It's here. It's all over the place. But where do you fall in a comprehensive gaming bill that would properly regulate and tax gaming and then a lottery as well?
Yeah, I support all of it, and for a variety of reasons. I mean, one, like I said, it's already happening, and we're now missing out on revenue that could help fund public educational purposes, that could help fund rural healthcare issues. I mean, there are so many important needs, and no one wants to raise taxes, so we have to look to other avenues to bring in the revenue. And secondly, though, and this is just history, but when things are done on a black market, when they're done, behind the scenes, it's so much more ripe for corruption and for issues where people are getting taken advantage of. So when you have a regulatory framework and you have a process in place to say this is how it should function, And it's just naive to say, well, oh, we're not going to legalize it and kind of be on this high horse about it. Other states around us obviously have a lottery, and again, we should and have good basic services from government. We have to figure out how to fund those, and gaming and a lottery is one way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and last thing, we'll get you back to those counties that you still got left on the chart. But healthcare. I don't think people fully understand still how bad healthcare costs are going to rise again in the coming year. We've already kicked a lot of people off. There are more cuts coming. There are a lot of people who are going to be searching for healthcare. There are a lot of people who are going to be stuffed into emergency rooms because of what happened with the big beautiful bill, and making sure that rich people got to write off their airplanes. But what can we do? What when you look at it, you're traveling around. Do you think people fully understand what's going on, and do you feel like that they're listening to the healthcare conversation?
Yeah, and let me say this: I always call it the big ugly bill because
Yeah.
of how all the ugliness it's imposed. So I refuse to even call it, that made up name.
Right.
And it is, I mean, on a very practical, real level, though. I mean, yeah, people are hurting, and in particularly in these more rural counties. I mean, hearing stories of people that are having to drive an hour or two to an emergency room, women who are nowhere near a labor and delivery room. So it's a very real thing. I do think that at times there's a disconnect where people know that their premiums are going up, and they know that it's harder to afford and get access to healthcare. But then with some people, and particularly on the right, if you say Medicaid expansion, they think, oh, well, that's just a handout for poor lazy people, and having to just explain, well, wait a second, that's an option for people that are actually working incredibly hard trying to make ends meet. And just so there's sometimes a disconnect between, I think, what people are feeling every day, and then what some of the policy issues are, or how it's impacting it. But when it comes to Medicaid expansion, I mean, the more I talk about it and break it down for people and say, look, this is about bringing some money into your county to help, be a revenue stream for your local hospital. This is not some government handout. That connects and resonates more with people. And I say, call it whatever you want: Medicaid expansion, closing the health insurance gap. At one point, someone said, let's call it K Care, for K Ivy Care. I
Right.
mean,
Right.
who cares what the name of it is? But no, that's a huge issue. And I mean, last thing I'll say on it, I mean, and this was the most heartbreaking. I mean, hearing a story from someone who shared that they know someone who has to choose between, this was in Russell County in Phoenix City, and someone told me, they heard from a resident who chooses between paying for her groceries and paying for her prescription drugs every month. I mean, and that's wild. I mean, and in the United States of America, in Alabama, no one should have to be doing that, especially when it's subsidizing, those that already are well off and can afford it.
Yeah, yeah. Just today we record this on Wednesday mornings, and Trump has ended Medicare subsidies for people. The things that were helping low income seniors afford some of their prescription medications. He's ended those subsidies. I mean, what are we doing anymore? It's just there seems to be, honestly, it seems like Republicans are trying to lose. It really does seem like Republicans are trying to lose this, and they're or at least testing the limits of how far they can go before whether or not voters will finally turn on them in some of these states. And man, I hope that we found the limit, and I hope that you and Doug and all up and down this ticket are successful, because your approach to things, the measured an intellectual approach to the way you've done this is so appealing to somebody like me, and I think to a lot of folks. The way you handle this, way you handle yourself out on the campaign trail, the way you handle yourself just in learning the issues. And I've known you for a long time. I knew you back when you're over in at R.E. Lee High School and teaching classes and stuff. Man, it's who you are, and so I just appreciate it, and I hope we'll continue to push for you. We'll get you back on anytime you would like, and spread the message around. And if we can help in any other way, you just let us know.
No, I appreciate that, and yeah, look, young people are a big part of why I'm doing this, and I'll wrap up with this that a young person said to me not too long ago, they call me Mr. Ensler because they still think of me as their teacher, and they said, Mr. Ensler, I've done all the things that I was told to do. I worked hard, I got good grades, I was respectful, but I just can't get by, and I can't pay off my student loans. I'm working as hard as I can, and I still, my car breaks down, and I can't afford to fix it. And it's that mindset, and not just mindset. It's the experience that people have. And people ask often, well, are we going to reach young voters? And I say, look, we have to talk about the issues that matter to them. And they want to know that if they do the right things, that they're at least going to have a good shot and good opportunity. So right, let Republicans, continue to do what they do, and we're going to focus on solutions and focus on doing things that actually move the state forward.
Well, I hope people realize it. I hope you're successful, and man, keep it up. But we really do appreciate you doing it and spending some time with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, David.
All
Good to
right,
see you,
thanks.
Philip.
All right, that is Lieutenant Governor candidate Philip Ensler. Get out, vote for him when you get the opportunity to do so, because we'd all be better off for it. All right, let's slide out. We'll come back in just a minute. It's Alabama Politics This Week. We're back in a moment. Alrighty, welcome back. Alabama Politics This Week. Josh Moon, David Person. Our thanks to Philip Ensler. Our thanks to Bobby Singleton. Really appreciate both of them for coming on, spending some time, and for what they do for the state, and for everybody, and working like they do on issues that are really good, and helping helping us move forward. Hopefully at some point. Also, thanks to the folks at Wind Creek Entertainment for their sponsorship. Thanks to the folks at SPLC, Southern Poverty Law Center. We really appreciate them and all that they do. Really one of the best organizations around, despite what some folks try to tell you. And the one thing I think we've all learned from Trump and his administration is the harder the Trump administration fights against you, the better you probably are. The
Mm,
better people that you probably are, and the better job you're trying to do, and the better America you're trying to create, because
mhm.
that seems to be the trend for those folks. All right. Let's wrap this up. We wanted there was one thing we wanted to talk about before we got
Yeah.
to the right wing nuts, and that was we touched a little bit on Tabitha Eisner last week, and kind of what's going on there, and um, you know. She's I wanna state clearly here, okay? I appreciate a lot of the things that Tabitha Eisner has done, and the organization that she's tried to bring about, some of the educational things that she's tried to do over the course of the last few years. Do I disagree with what she's doing right now? Yes, I do. I do. I don't think it's beneficial to anybody that the vice chair of the party should be willing to help. I understand her reasoning, and I'm not saying that her reasoning is without merit, that, she believes that these things have harmed the party, that the folks at the top who are currently in charge have harmed the party. And I've had my issues with Randy Kelly, and I've had issues with Joe Reed. We've talked about those things with those gentlemen on this show in the past, and so people know where I stand. But the timing of the message is terrible, and because it's not simply about what you think is right or wrong with this party. It's also about all of that ticket that we've talked about so much, up and down that thing. How is this affecting those people? And it's affecting those people negatively. Okay, it's affecting them negatively because you're hurting their fundraising. You're hurting their, you're drawing focus away from real issues out there, the data center stuff, the rural healthcare stuff, I mean, all of these things that we've talked about, that we talked about with Philip Ensler. You're drawing attention away from that for a fight that you're not even really involved with right now. There's an opportunity if you want to elect somebody different. Bobby Singleton is running. He's a different person out there. He's bringing a different message. Go and elect Bobby Singleton. Push for him. Push for him to do this and stop this stuff, man. I mean, I just
Yeah.
I'm at my wits end with some of this.
Yeah, she and I exchanged some emails, and I know she's talked to you.
Mhm.
I think well, first of all, let me say I was looking at our upcoming schedule. I think we probably ought to try to find a way to see if we can get her on the podcast here in the next sometime in August if possible. Because I think it would be good for all of us to sort of flesh this out. She believes strongly. One thing I love about her is that she's a person of conviction. I do believe that. I
Yeah.
don't believe she's insincere, in what she's doing. I think she believes she's doing the right thing. Like you, I think it's bad strategy at this particular
Yeah.
juncture. I think, not right before an election. And I'm not talking about the Democratic Party's internal election. I'm talking about, the statewide election we're coming up on and even the national election. I just I just think the timing is bad. I don't think it's productive. I don't think it helps unify Democrats. And as we've been talking about extensively today, Democratic unity is crucial right now. And I don't see how what she's doing moves us any closer to that. I think
Yeah.
Bobby Singleton's candidacy to be the party chair may move us towards that. I hope it will, though I'm not entirely sure even that's going to do it. But I think at least what he's doing is a lot, and the way, and not just what he's doing, but what he's saying is
Mhm.
a lot better in terms of moving us towards unity than what Tabitha is doing. And I'm not even saying that she doesn't have some valid points. I think she raises some valid points. She raises some important questions that do need answers and do need to be discussed and fleshed out. But I just think the timing is bad.
Yeah, yeah. Look, there some issues with some. Here I want to also separate some of these things out. Okay, look, the stuff about the get out the vote thing, and the check that went to the to
Yeah.
whoever the check went to. All right, look, if there was some technical, and I don't mean to reduce it by saying technical. I mean actually technical as a term that you would use to describe what's taking place here, not as a belittling term. But if there was a technical error or fraud that took place in recording that check that she says was $5,000 check that she sent to what was the name of the
The
group?
PAC, I thought it was to
Yeah.
the ADC, was it not? Was it to
No,
somebody else?
it was to a different pack, but black people or black elected leaders or something
Okay,
along
I
those
don't
lines.
I
It was
don't remember, yeah.
okay, okay, that you know that if there was the case, I seem to recall that thing being looked at and it being there was an explanation back. This was 8 years ago. This was 8 years ago
Mhm,
that it happened.
mhm.
So okay, that's whatever, but that sort of transactional thing that we've now put out in front of everybody is happens every single day in the Republican Party. Okay?
Mm.
The campaigns kick up to these people who help organize different things. Okay? They kick up to different PACs, they kick up to different organizations. It happens all the time. It happens in California with Democrats as well. Okay? I'm not saying I'm not just necessarily picking on Republicans here and saying they're doing something nefarious. This is the way that it works a lot of times. Campaigns bring in some money and they help fund a greater get out the vote effort. They help fund greater
Right.
things like that. Yes. Does the party then take itself come out and try to help some candidates and do some stuff like that? Yes. Yes, they do in a lot of cases. And do I feel like the Alabama Democratic Party has failed in a lot of those cases? Yes, I do. Yes, I do feel that way. But this is to paint it in the way that it's being painted right now is, I think, very unfair to the party as a whole. I'm not necessarily concerned about the individuals. I'm concerned about the party as
Mm,
a whole because it makes it seem as though because black people are doing it, that it's wrong. That it's, oh, look at that. Oh, Joe
mm,
Reed, sketchy ass Joe Reed. No, 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 no. Then you need to talk about sketchy ass Scott Stadhagen then too, and all the other ones who have come before him on the Republican side, and all the people who were involved in this. It's kind of the same thing about those folks who are consultants that got wrapped up in the probate judge issue in Jefferson County, and now
mm.
look how much money that she gave to these Democratic consultants. Hey, would you like for me to start naming off Republican consultants who keep getting paid out of the Speaker of the House's office, the Lieutenant Governor's office, the Senate Majority Leader's office? I mean, that's how
Yeah,
this works. Democrats hire Democratic consultants that work with them all the time because they have the knowledge and the skill set to do that. Republicans hire Republican strategists that work, and that's how they go. That's how this thing works. That's how the world turns in the land of politics, man.
yeah.
And so, but now it's nefarious because these are guys who work for Democrats, most of them who are black people, and and so now they have to be painted with this sketchy brush.
And, and I'm glad you said that because I know one of the people whose names has surfaced is a North Alabama
Yep.
consultant, Samuel Green.
Yep.
And you know what? There are other people that are very much a part of that ecosystem whose names I never hear,
Yep.
and they are white. They are
Mhm.
white, and I never hear their names being, nobody's ever saying, "Oh, there's something shady about the fact."
Yeah.
I was in a meeting one time. I was in a meeting one time with the mayor of Huntsville, Tommy Battle,
Mhm.
and we had we were this was the Rosa Parks Committee of Huntsville, and we had Angela Curry was there, and some other folks. I don't remember everybody who was there, but there was a political consultant, a non-elected person, sitting there next to the governor. I'm not going to name the person because I don't want to. I don't want to do what to him what others are doing to Samuel Green and others. But he was sitting there, and I kind of wondered. I'll be honest. I wonder, why is he here? He's not an
Mhm.
elected official, you know. But at the same time, can I say that there was something shady about the fact he was there? No, I never thought it was shady. I thought it was unusual. And I
Yeah.
thought that it was part probably of some messaging strategy that the mayor was trying to implement out of
Yeah.
our meeting. And we went in there with our own messaging strategy. So, there's nothing nefarious about it. You're
Yeah.
right. It's part of the political ecosystem, and there's nothing innately controversial or innately
No.
corrupt about it.
No, there's not. They hired these guys were hired to do a job by a person who is in a position of power in Jefferson County.
Yeah.
If there was some nefarious act that took place while that was going on, and I mean, they're consultants working on messaging stuff and on and
Yep.
helping them get out different things. What how you're dragging them into this is, I mean, it's the most unfair thing that I think I've ever seen. And you're right, and it just is. It's so it's really racist is what it really is. Okay. It really is racist. I'm not saying what's taking place with the probate judge in Jefferson County is at all. I think that that's a very fair investigation into some of the acts that she's done and things that the way she's behaved. I think that's what's going on there is, should be investigated. But and I think it's fine to look at the contracts as well. But to
Mhm.
to just infer that something shady has happened simply because these folks are black Democrats is, I mean, it really reeks of bigotry. It really, really does. I mean, it just is so, it's icky. It really is icky, and these are good people, man, who've done good jobs, and nobody has ever accused them of being shady. That's the thing about it.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, simply because they had a contract with somebody who rightfully had the authority to give the contract, who rightfully engaged
Right.
that person with that, and they
Right.
performed work for. I mean, come on,
Yeah.
man. It's so
And
unfair
and
to those people.
and And in full disclosure, there are many of us who make our living as consultants. I'm one of them. And I
Mhm.
consult with organizations and companies and individuals. There's nothing
Yep.
innately corrupt or nefarious about that.
Nothing.
It's the way that the business world works. People
Yep.
bring in outside people with expertise that's unique to do specific things, to accomplish specific tasks that people perhaps inside their organizations either don't have the skill set to do or don't have the time and resources to do. And so
Yeah.
that's why they bring people like me in to do that kind of stuff for them.
Yep.
There's nothing inherently, there's nothing inherently corrupt or about that.
No.
It's just a ridiculous. Now, if you
It is.
find somebody's done something, gotten some money from some, illicit source, or that they've done something that is specifically illicit, then that's another question.
Of course, yeah. I mean, but there's
Yeah.
nothing in this. They just painted them
Right.
with this brush because of the
Right.
lady there, and then of the fact that they were Black Democrats, and I mean, it just it's you're right. There are other people involved whose names you never hear
Right.
from them. These
That's
things,
right.
and that's really where I think you can see the difference in this sort of thing, and where the
Right.
fault lies. All right, before we get out of here, right wing nut, and the right wing nut are the people that are driving up uh, the rates of disease in this state that could be controlled and reduced down to nothing with vaccines. And last week, Scott Harris at Alabama Department of Public Health went on the Capital Journal and talked about the increase to record numbers of the cases of measles in the state among children, and we've hit a record. It's outpacing most every other year in our lives and most of our lives, because he said it's because people aren't getting the vaccines as much anymore, and because there is vaccine skepticism brought on by the Facebook doctors of the world out there that had to convince everybody that the COVID vaccine was some ploy by the government to make you sick and dead. For what reason, no one has ever articulated, and that they wanted to give you this vaccine for some reason that was nefarious, but no one could ever tell you why they wanted to do this nefarious thing. Get your kids vaccinated. Come on, y'all. We've been doing this for a long time, and the rates of harmful side effects of these vaccines are so minimal. They really are so minimal. And the idea that you've allowed a handful of really, really goofy people out there to influence you away from protecting your children is really, really quite concerning.
Yeah, let's just put the blame where it belongs. It belongs with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and
Mhm.
his previous, and we're talking about something that has been increasing over the past few years. But since he's been in the position he's been in, and even prior to being in the position, with his public position being known on vaccination, I think it's had a deleterious effect on the
Mhm.
American population, because looking at uh, the CDC's website, which again is controlled by the Trump administration at this point,
Mhm.
it's very clear that there has been a steady increase, not huge, not explosive, but there has been a steady increase in measles cases in our
Yeah.
country. And there shouldn't be, because as has been stated previously by others, we had pretty much eradicated measles. So the
Yep.
fact that we're now up to, I think it's 2,300, 2,318 confirmed cases as of last week. That's a reason to be concerned,
Yeah.
and it's a disease that is communicable. So that's
Mhm.
a reason to be concerned. So
Yeah.
yes, it's a problem. Scott Harris is absolutely right, I think, to speak to the fact that it's a problem. And anybody that doesn't see the correlation, I'm thinking, what are you drinking? What are you
I
smoking?
just I don't understand, man. I mean, as someone said not too long ago, I can't take health advice from somebody who won't even go. You know. So, and clear that up. But, if you think about that for a
Wait.
minute, I guess.
Okay.
Uh, uh, yeah, Robert Kennedy. You don't
Yeah,
even,
yeah, yeah.
come on.
Yeah, just the
It
yeah, that constant
yeah,
raspiness.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
No, look, all joking aside, I
yeah.
mean, folks, come on, man. I mean, this idea that, for some reason or another, people seem to think that there was a point in which vaccines stopped being 100% effective. No. That flu vaccine that you've been getting for years is like way less effective than the COVID vaccine. All right. But it still
Mhm.
stops some flu. And in some cases, it makes the flu that you get less harmful to you. The symptoms aren't as bad. And so, I mean, and it's the same with some of these other vaccines. You're not guaranteed that you're never going to get some of this stuff that the vaccines work against. But, man, I just, read something. You have a supercomputer in your pocket, okay? Just go to some decent places and read some things and stop relying on
Mhm.
idiots out there to influence you one way or the other about what's going on. It just come on, y'all. Come on, man.
Come on,
What are we
man.
even doing out here, man? All right, we gotta get out of here. Till next week, y'all be safe out
All
there.
right, man. Peace.